Welcome to Case Unsolved. Tonight, can you help unravel the mystery surrounding a grandmother from North Wales who left a note saying she'd be back in 2 minutes, but has never been seen again? But first, the tragic case of Nigel Bostock, who ran a shoe shop in Southport. In 1986, Nigel was found by police officers, slumped over a bath in his home. He was half naked and had been stabbed in the chest several times. Detectives are still hunting for his killer. Perhaps you may be able to help. It was the time of the 80s boom, and business was going well for Nigel Bostock. He was negotiating the expansion of his Southport shoe shop.
He was a very good entrepreneur. He was in the process of processing the sale of a business in Crosby.
For a lot of years he used to work for a shoe company, and then he decided to open his own shoe shop, and he bought a shop in Southport and did very, very well then. He put his heart and soul into his business. That was a lot of his life.
Nigel had a good eye for buying shoes with a little bit more flair than myself. He was very knowledgeable in the shoe trade, and he certainly was going places.
Nigel was a very quiet person, very timid person, although he socialised quite often and liked to meet other people, but he was very quiet and kept himself to himself, basically.
Nigel Bostock was a man in his early 30s. He was about 5 feet 10 inches tall. He was slim build, had mousy brown hair and a moustache, and at the time of his murder he was living in a house in Banks in Lancashire. Nigel Bostock and Frida were very, very close. Frida had worked with Nigel for a number of years and was in actual fact the manageress of the shop in Wesley Street. She also did a number of domestic chores for Nigel, such as the washing and the ironing, and they were very close.
He was very close to Frida. She mothered him in a lot of ways. They worked together for many years, and she lived over the shop, over his business. So they was together quite often.
I'm showing off your best side again.
Cheeky beggar. What have you got there?
Frida had been, as far as my knowledge is, that she'd been the first sales with him when he was in management in Chapel Street, Southport, I believe. In my opinion, she was first class. She was very good in the shop and very reliable. And they seemed to have a good relationship. They went out together, had meals together.
It's true to say that Nigel and Frida would have been seen around Southport on a very regular basis. And in fact, we know that Nigel, on most Friday evenings after work, would take Frida out into Southport and use one of the many restaurants there.
15, 20 years ago in Southport, the gay scene was very, very quiet. There was actually no gay scene at all. If you wanted to frequent gay bars, then you would have to drive out, say to Blackpool, Manchester or Liverpool. But as far as gay places in Southport, then there was nowhere at all to go.
Nigel Bostock liked to socialise. So if he went out locally, his favourite haunt was the Fox and Goose. In there, bikers and gay men mixed happily.
What Nigel did was to try and keep that particular aspect of his life away from his business life.
It was a shock, personally to me, to discover that Nigel was even gay. I had no inkling that he was in my conversations with him.
As well as keeping his business and personal life separate, Nigel also kept some aspects of his private life secret from his friends. In fact, Nigel liked to cruise the Southport area looking for men to befriend. And one such man, detectives would still like to trace.
We do know that in the weeks prior to his death, Nigel was having a relationship with a young man called Carl. We believe Carl was from the Southport area. He was in his early 20s. He was quite tall and slim. And we've traced a number of Carls throughout the course of this investigation, but we're still not convinced that we've traced the Carl who was in Nigel's house and having a relation with Nigel prior to his death.
The date is Friday, December the 19th, 1986. John Stalker had resigned that day as Deputy Chief Constable of Greater Manchester. Lester Piggott was bailed for £1 million for tax evasion, and at the end of that week, the notorious murderers Hindley and Brady returned to Saddleworth Moors to locate the graves of their missing victims. In Nigel's shoe shop, it wasn't quite business as usual.
No, we haven't got those in a size 10, I'm afraid. OK, well, thanks for ringing. Bye-bye.
On Friday the 19th of December, we know that Nigel was at work during the day and that round about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon, he left work to go back home to his house in Banks as he had a pre-arranged visit booked with a local heating engineer as he was having problems with his boiler. And in actual fact, that was the last person to see Nigel alive. We do know, however, that during the evening, neighbours of Nigel's heard noises coming from the house, heard raised voices, male voices, and we do know that there were a number of visitors to Nigel's house during that evening. What we're trying to establish is exactly who those people were. There was evidence within the house of a number of people. There were empty beer cans and lots of cigarettes in the ashtray, which would indicate that there was more than Nigel and one person there, and it is possible that whoever was in the house was the killer. Nigel's body was discovered shortly before 1 p.m. on Saturday the 20th of December by a friend of his. He was found upstairs in the bathroom. He was lying in the bath, half naked. There was an electric cord or flex around Nigel's neck, and there were a number of stab wounds to his chest. We know that Nigel had a Bulova Accutron wristwatch, which was quite rare in those days. We believe that there was probably less than 150 watches of a similar make sold within the UK. We also know that Nigel's briefcase had been forced open, and we believe approximately £700 in cash had been taken from it. And also 2 signet rings were missing, one of them which had the letter N for Nigel on it. We know that Nigel was on the train from Southport to Liverpool 2 nights before he was murdered, and we know that he was with a party of young men, and we would anticipate that he was on his way to one of the gay clubs or the gay pubs in Liverpool, and that he actually got off at the Sandhills or the Liverpool stop. We don't know who these people were. Somebody must have seen Nigel with these people on that evening, and we'd asked them to come forward with that information.
I was quite surprised when I'd heard that he'd been murdered in his own house, because obviously he must have known the person who he'd invited back to his house. I don't know, it could have been somebody he's picked up on his way in Trevaline. People still talk about it, only for the reason the police never found anybody for the murder, so it's been a complete mystery.
We did recover a lot of forensic evidence from the scene, and that was forensically examined at the time. However, technology has come on in such leaps and bounds that we are constantly reviewing the forensic evidence that we recovered in the hope that it may lead to the identification of Nigel's killers. And we are hopeful that we will be able to turn that scientific evidence into evidence that we can put before the court. Nigel Bostock was well known within the gay scene in the north of England and spent most of his social time in clubs in the Liverpool, Manchester and Blackpool area. Society's attitudes towards the gay community has changed since 1986, and as you would expect, the police force attitude has changed likewise. It may well be that people who in 1986, because of their business life, because of their social life or because of their family life, did not feel confident to come forward with information. Can I take this opportunity to reassure them that if there is anybody out there who has information and does have those concerns, please put those concerns to the back of your mind and come forward, because you will be treated with the strictest of confidence.
Nigel was a very private person. He had his ups and downs like most people. But on a whole, he was a friendly, happy person who enjoyed life.
He never gave me the impression that he was living the high life, none whatsoever. It became a complete surprise to me that he enjoyed the club life in Manchester and Blackpool, because he was more of a quiet, inoffensive man.
If anybody has any information out there, please come forward, as Nigel was a lovely person, wouldn't harm anybody. And after all these years, it'd be nice to have this mystery solved as a friend.
Welcome back to Case Unsolved. In June 1990, Trevaline Evans left the antique shop she ran in Llangollen and put a note on the door saying she'd be back in 2 minutes, but she'd never been seen or heard from since. Detectives are convinced that she was murdered, but her body has never been found. They've continued to search the area in the hope of finding her, because once they find Trevaline's body, they'll probably be able to catch the killer. The sleepy town of Llangollen in North Wales, where Trevaline Evans was born and brought up. It was here that she ran her antiques and bric-a-brac shop. And from here that she disappeared one Saturday afternoon in June, 11 years ago.
The last time I saw Trevaline was exactly the week before, on the Saturday previous. And she told me then that she had an appointment on the day she went missing to view a bungalow in St Martin's, which is a village about 6 or 8 miles from Llangollen. She never ever made that appointment.
She opened the shop as normal about 9 o'clock. There are a couple of sightings to her on her way to work. And then there are sightings during the morning when she's been known frequently to close the shop and leave a sign to say that she will be back returning shortly. And that's what in fact happened at lunchtime on the Saturday. The shop was locked at just after 12 o'clock. But Trevaline left property in the shop which indicated, together with a sign on the door, back in 2 minutes, that she intended to return.
But Trevaline wasn't back in 2 minutes. The 52-year-old grandmother was never seen by her family again.
Trevaline was a very independent sort of person. From a very early age, I was 6 years old, Trevaline was 12 years old. We lost our mother, and Trevaline became sort of the head of the family, and she had to stand on her own 2 feet at a very early age. And she was more or less the mother image in the family. She was very confident in anything she did, and whatever she got involved in, she was always sort of very determined to see it through. At the time she went missing, she was trying to build up her antique shop business, and she was very much involved in that project. She was quite a sociable and bouncy sort of girl, really. You know, she always liked meeting people, and that's why I think she enjoyed keeping the antique shop. And a lot of it was to meet a lot of friends and customers, you know.
The first report of Trevaline Evans' disappearance was made to the North Wales Police just before midnight on Saturday the 16th of June. The last sighting that we subsequently could trace of her was at 2:15. So it was already almost 10 hours after her disappearance that an official report was made to the North Wales Police.
It was about 7:15 on a Sunday, the day after she'd gone missing. Brother rang me up to say that she hadn't returned home, and within 10-15 minutes I went down to Llangollen and we started searching. The first day we didn't really know what had happened. We spent our time walking the old haunts we used to go to when we were children, thinking that she might have just taken time out to think things over.
Detectives launched the search for Trevaline, and several people came forward who said they'd seen her in the town on that Saturday afternoon.
There are 4 sightings, positive sightings thereafter, until the last sighting is at 2:15 in close proximity to her home address in Market Street. That is the last sighting of Trevaline Evans for 11 years. And it's fair to say that in 1990 the hope of family, friends and the police officers was that she would be found shortly afterwards, alive and hopefully safe and well. So they were very much making inquiries: transport, taxis, buses, trains, etc.
The initial investigation had to assume that Trevaline had simply gone missing, but it wasn't long before detectives became suspicious that something more sinister had happened.
When a person disappears, and the first possibility is that they've chosen to move on. The circumstances of such was that she had the bric-a-brac shop, which was successful. She was happy with her life, although there was some tension within her married life. She had a son. She also had a grandson, her son being married. And she was very, very much family orientated and had a lot of contact with her grandchild. The shop was opened as normal on the Saturday, closed at lunchtime, and left within the shop was her handbag, including makeup. She'd taken the keys with her, but all the indications were that she was intending to return to the shop later that day. How has she managed to sustain herself financially over that period of time? So then you have to start applying some thought processes to what might have happened to her.
Even a series of tragic events hasn't prompted Trevaline to get in touch.
And during that period, her father has died. Her own son, Richard Evans, who was a serving North Wales police officer, unfortunately died 2 years ago of natural causes. Neither of those events in her life have prompted her to make any contact, and certainly her brothers, Len and Philip, have heard nothing from her during that time.
Now, there was 3 conclusions you could come to. That 1, she could have gone off, start a new life. Or 2, she may have committed suicide, which I feel very, very unlikely that would have happened, knowing her frame of mind and character. And thirdly, that she may have been abducted and possibly murdered. But as the inquiry and time moved on, my feeling stronger that she would have been abducted and possibly murdered.
Trevaline has never been found, and 10 years on, detectives took a fresh look at the case.
In looking for clues to help the investigation, I've concentrated on the last sightings of Trevaline Evans, which are in Llangollen town centre, midday on Saturday the 16th of June. The last sighting of her alive is at just after 2:15 in close proximity to her home address. No indication at all that she should be in any way frightened or in fear. She looked quite normal, quite relaxed. There's no indication of any incident at all which she can be connected to.
As well as sightings during the day in the town, there was one possibly significant sighting of Trevaline on the Saturday evening in Llangollen.
A couple of ladies from Scotland were visiting Llangollen on the Friday and Saturday, 15th and 16th of June, and they are adamant that they made a purchase in Trevaline's shop on the Friday and that they saw the same lady in Gale's Wine Bar, which is located a short distance from the bric-a-brac shop in Church Street in Llangollen, and that they saw Trevaline in the Gale's Wine Bar with a male, described as about 50 years of age, with greying hair of distinguished appearance. I know it's 11 years ago, but if anybody was in Gale's Wine Bar at that time, or has heard anything about movements from then that hasn't been in contact with us, then I would very much like to hear from them.
The fact that Trevaline's body has never been found has proved a major difficulty for detectives, and recently they've undertaken several extensive new searches.
This has been a very difficult investigation, not only for the team in 1990, but also for the new team now in 2001. Normally when we attend to an incident, you have a crime scene and you have a victim, and you look for evidence at those scenes, and you develop things forensically from there. I don't have a crime scene. I cannot at this stage determine where exactly an attack took place, where the body has been disposed of. It's been a priority to try and identify that. And neither have I a victim. I don't have a body. And again, that has been a priority to try and identify where Trevaline's body has been disposed of. But at this stage, we've been unsuccessful. We're still hopeful.
Although so far the searches have drawn a blank, there's one thing that detectives and Trevaline's family are convinced of: that she knew her killer.
Trevaline was by no means naive. I don't think she would have been a dupe, someone had taken her into the confidence. She was pretty streetwise for choice of a better term. And I still believe that, you know, it would have to been someone that she knew well if she'd left Llangollen in a car. I don't think she would have gone off with a complete stranger without telling one of the family where she was going.
It would be unlikely that somebody would have stumbled across Trevaline by accident as a stranger and taken the risk to meet her, attack her, and if she has been killed, she probably has been killed, to dispose of the body. There are 3 risk elements involved there. We felt that she met with somebody she knew, and it wasn't a chance meeting, it was probably a planned meeting. But wherever she went with consent. But I still feel the answer is in Llangollen. There is somebody in Llangollen who knows more than they've told us or have told the original inquiry. And I hope perhaps after watching this programme that they will feel confident enough to be able to tell us that additional bit of information, if not for the North Wales Police's sake, for Trevaline Evans and her family's sake.
If we'd known she'd gone away and started a new life, I'd have said, well, it was her prerogative. But not knowing what's happened to her and believing that she's abducted and murdered and maybe lying somewhere in a shallow grave, it's very disturbing. And until I find out where she is, I don't think I'll ever rest.